All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. They'll be doing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Maryland Terrapins. Looking at this coaching staff, Mike Locksley back for his fourth season since his return to the program after a stint a couple years ago. 13-23 record so far. Dan Enos, his second year with the Terrapins as the offensive play caller, and then Brian Williams, a pretty underrated recruiter here in the Big Ten. His fourth year on staff. This will be his first, though, as the defensive coordinator. 38th ranked recruiting class for Maryland this offseason. They also had two players drafted back in April. Looking at this offense, it was a pretty solid bunch last year. I'd say Talia Tagovailoa developed the way they expect. Showed good command in the passing game with his guidance, 3,800 yards, completed 69% of his passes, 26 scores. Great out of the pocket. We can fit it in the tight windows. Pretty nice downfield accuracy. But there are some negatives to his game. He often stares down receivers, struggles to stay in the pocket. He's kind of got a turnover problem. 18 picks over the last 17 games. So obviously some things for Talia and Dan Enos to work on this fall, but they really like who they have under center, one of the better passers in the conference. Maryland ran the ball quite often, this last year for the offensive philosophy they roll out with, nearly 34 times per game, 136.6 yards per game. So they had sizable balance, nothing too crazy. Fleet Davis does depart, though, and they return Colby McDonald, Shaylin Famato at running back, both 210-plus pounds. So they don't have a lot of speed. They have a good bit of size, though. I don't expect too much fall off from the running game. I don't expect them to really improve either, though. Looking at the pass catchers for Maryland, 5 transfer out. They do return the top 2. And they also added Jacob Copeland from Florida and Dante Demas. He's back from a devastating knee injury. Great to see him healthy and on the field this fall. 28 grabs for 507 yards in a little less than 6 games. 6'4", 215. He attacks the ball very well, has strong hands. He can line up anywhere, inside, outside. That good speed he possesses allows him to do a good bit of things for this offense. He does need to develop his route tree a good bit, but as a raw prospect so far, I like what Demas brings to the table, and it was unfortunate he was not able to stay healthy last year, but I'm glad that he's coming back this season to work with Raheem Jarrett. This is a guy with explosive burst, a very crisp, sharp route runner, a much better route runner than Demas. I think these guys can certainly coach each other up in certain aspects of their game. He does a good job of getting open, though. I like to see him get the ball underneath on the edge, allow him to do the rest. That's really where he thrives, but former 5-star recruit that was once going to head to LSU came to Maryland. I think this is time for him to certainly break out. And, Jarrett and Demas, these guys are one of the top receiving duos in the nation, I'd say, so Maryland certainly has great things at wide receiver. And then the aforementioned Jacob Copeland, he was UF's leading pass catcher a season ago. He arrives here for the Terrapins. G-Sean Jones as well struggled with health over his entire career. He has never been very productive, but he's pretty versatile, so they have some nice pass catchers. They don't have as much depth as they did because for some reason they did have 5 transfer out. But from a starting 3 perspective, can't really get much better than this. It's one of the top cores in the conference. The offensive line for the Terrapins, they get back all 5 starters on an O-line that wasn't particularly good. They weren't bad either, but growth opportunity is certainly there. Some pretty good size, average of 6'5", 318, a pretty massive unit. I like Spencer Anderson, Mason Lunsford on the interior. Just progression, though, is what you really want to see out of this unit to get everybody back. They have a lot of size. They should be able to have a lot of clean pockets for Talia this fall. They should be able to get the piles moving a bit on the ground as well. So I think this offense is certainly in some pretty good hands. They get back 8 total starters. They do lose Fleet Davis and then a fast tight end in Okawanko. So in the aforementioned depth at right receiver. But overall, I think this offense should certainly continue to take steps forward this fall, along with Tagovailoa's development. Very interested to see what happens for Maryland on the offensive side of the ball. The Terrapins get back 7 starters on defense. 4 guys transferred out, including a former 5-star in Terrence Lewis. But you look at this veteran defensive line. They didn't get into the backfield very well last year, though. That was a big struggle for them. Only 4 tackles for loss per game in Big Ten play. That's not very good. The pass rush wasn't awful. They do get back Nazil Kite and Greg Rose. Mosiah Nazil Kite, that is. Both possess pretty good size. They need others around them to step up, though. This defensive line was not very good last season. They really struggled against the run. It was much better than it was 2 seasons ago, but they still need to improve on the 154 yards per game mark. Quite likely they do that, but linebacking core will be a big factor here. They don't really have an edge presence. They did just lose Terrence Lewis, but Brandon Jennings, another one of those recruits from 2021, he's gone as well. They're both to UCF. Kind of depleted at linebacker. Ahmad McCullough, Ruben Hypopoli, they're both going to be in the lineup this fall. The front 7, I'm not really sure what to say about it. I think like Rose and Nazil Kite, they're pretty good. But after that, I don't know who's going to step up at all on this front 7. But Locksley, I think he's got some nice pieces to work with here on defense. The Maryland secondary last year, they had 2 stars in Jordan Mosley and Nick Cross. They're still one of the poorest back ends in the country. Not many teams allowed bigger plays than them. They only had 6 interceptions as well, coming by 2 players who had 3 each. Jorian Bennett was one of them. He was the other outside of Cross who had 3 picks. Bennett, though, he was phenomenal. He had 13 pass breakups, showed great abilities and coverage last year. He's kind of one of the bright spots there. They do get back veteran to Herb still, but they have a lot of growth to undergo. We replaced a lot of guys, Mosley and Cross being gone, and to see them be that poor regardless of having those guys, along with the aforementioned Bennett stepping up and being a playmaker for them. The secondary was very poor last year. I'm not really sure how they're going to get any better. I don't expect them to. Overall, as a defense, 7 starters are back, but there's not much talent, really. There's not much in the middle of the defense. I think the defensive line will certainly continue to progress a good bit. I think the run defense will step up a little bit, but I don't know how the rest of this defense will do. That's why, looking at this prediction, 5-7 for Maryland. I think they can beat Michigan State being at home with a good matchup versus that secondary, even though that's kind of Mel Tucker's focal point this year. But they'll certainly be much better come October. I think they get outscored by Purdue, who's got a strong wide receiver group. They aren't beating the heavyweights of the conference. That's the problem. They're not going to this year. Aside of this passing game mixed with a pretty big offensive line, nothing really to rave about. They've allowed 49+ to Ohio State for 7 straight years, maybe at home. They could do a little bit better. I don't know, this defense, if the Ohio State defense doesn't improve like we expect they will, maybe they can possess an upset late in the year. They almost did that a couple years ago. Maybe they could somehow outscore the Buckeyes if that defense is obviously not good. But all in all, don't really see this as a very successful season for Maryland. I do have them winning the first 3 games, non-conference after that, though I think it gets a little shaky. And I do think they lose on the road to Indiana. I think the Hoosiers will play a really good game that day. That's the only conference win I have for the Hoosiers, so that's not saying much. But overall, they're not going to beat anyone in November outside of Rutgers. I think they'll beat them at home, but they might even lose that game as well. I don't think they beat Wisconsin, Penn State, or Ohio State. It's going to be a tough year, I think, for Maryland, just because there's not really to rave about outside of this offense. Maybe they could outscore everybody. Certainly possible with the receivers they have and the quarterback they have, but the defense, I'm not really happy with that unit. The running game's nothing too special. Overall, if the defense can take massive steps forward somehow, then I think there's some good potential for this team. But overall, 5-7 is the final verdict. I do think they do have the potential to get to a bowl game. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.